Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about your brain's secret bodyguard, those unconscious strategies your mind uses every single day to protect you. So let's go ahead and meet the security team, shall we? So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a just awful day at work and you come home and find yourself snapping at your family over something totally minor? Or maybe you get rejected for a job you really wanted and you immediately think, I didn't want it anyway. Well, these moments aren't just you being in a bad mood. They're actually little clues pointing to a fascinating process happening deep inside your mind. And what's going on here is something psychologists call defense mechanisms. You can think of them as your mind's automatic self-preservation system. See, when you're faced with a feeling or a situation that's just too stressful or painful to deal with head-on, your ego steps in and deploys these little strategies to shield you from the anxiety. They're not inherently good or bad. They are, first and foremost, survival tools. Now, a great way to understand these is to picture them on a kind of ladder. At the very bottom, you've got your primitive defenses. These are the ones that basically just hide from reality. As you climb up, you get to the neurotic defenses, which are a bit more sophisticated. They bend reality. And then at the very top, you have the mature defenses, the healthiest ways of actually facing reality. Okay, so let's start at the bottom of that ladder. We're diving into the primitive defenses. You can think of these as the mind's blunt instruments. When reality becomes too much, these are the tools that just say, nope, not dealing with it. And the first one is probably the one we've all heard of, denial. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's the mind's flat-out refusal to accept a painful truth. The fact is just too much to handle, so your brain slams the door shut and pretends it doesn't even exist.
And here is a classic example. Someone struggling with alcoholism might insist they have it totally under control, even if their life is telling a very different story. Their mind is literally protecting them from the shame and fear of their addiction by refusing to even admit that it's real.
All right, next up is projection. Now, this one is a fascinating bit of mental gymnastics. It's where instead of admitting you have an uncomfortable quality, you start seeing it very clearly in someone else. It's like you take something you don't like about yourself and you just outsource it. This is such a powerful mental trick, isn't it? The ego just can't handle the thought, I am a cheater, because that would create way too much anxiety. So what does it do? It flips the script. It says, no, they're the one who's cheating on me. The bad feeling is still there, but poof, now it's someone else's fault. So the main takeaway for these primitive defenses, denial, projection, and the others, is that they all work by fundamentally twisting or just straight up ignoring reality. They give you instant relief, sure, but they also stop you from ever dealing with what's actually going on. Okay, time to climb up to the next rung on our ladder. Let's talk about the neurotic defenses. Now, these are a bit more clever, a bit more subtle. They don't deny that reality exists, but boy, do they find some creative ways to bend it around to make you feel less anxious. And this takes us right back to that question I asked at the beginning. You're absolutely furious with your boss, right? But you can't scream at your boss. That's a threatening target. So that anger has to go somewhere. It gets redirected onto a safer target, your family, your dog, or maybe you just slam a door. I mean, we see this all the time. The emotion is totally real and valid, but its target is completely wrong. The frustration that started with someone powerful finds a new home where it can be let out with fewer immediate consequences, even if it's completely unfair to that new target. Rationalization. This is where the mind becomes a brilliant storyteller. It doesn't deny what happened, but it cooks up a perfectly logical sounding, but totally false reason for why it happened. It's all about making an uncomfortable situation feel okay by wrapping it in the language of logic. And the classic sour grape story is the perfect example of this. You know, the fox tries and tries to get these grapes, but he just can't reach them. So to deal with the feeling of failure, what does he do? He tells himself, you know what? I never wanted those anyway. They were probably sour. It's a clever way the ego protects itself from feeling inadequate. Okay, now this is a really important distinction because people mix these two up all the time. Repression versus suppression. Here's the key difference. Repression is totally unconscious. It's your brain bearing a painful memory so deep you don't even know it's there. Suppression, on the other hand, is conscious. It's you actively making a choice to say, you know what, I'm not going to think about that right now. So you can see how these neurotic defenses are more sophisticated, right? They don't just erase reality, they reshape it. They misdirect your feelings, invent excuses, or bury memories, all to keep that anxiety down. They're a step up for sure.
but they can still get in the way of real emotional growth.
All right, now we've reached the top of the ladder. This is the goal. We're talking about the mature defenses, the healthy, constructive ways our minds can handle stress by actually facing reality and channeling our feelings in a productive way. And this one, sublimation, is widely considered one of the healthiest defenses there is. It's the process of taking raw, often unacceptable impulses, like aggression or frustration, and transforming all that energy into something positive, something creative, something the world actually values. This is sublimation in a nutshell. Instead of getting into fights or acting out, this person channels that exact same aggressive energy into the discipline and hard work of sports. The impulse isn't ignored or pushed down, it's harnessed and refocused into something that can lead to incredible achievement. This little comparison makes the difference crystal clear. Look, both defenses start with the exact same trigger. You're angry at your boss. Displacement takes a destructive path. You go home and hurt an innocent person. Sublimation takes a constructive path. Use that energy to improve your health at the gym. It's the same impulse, but with a vastly different outcome. So we've gone on this whole journey, right? From hiding from reality to bending it to finally facing it head on. So what's the big takeaway here? What do you do with all this information? Well, this ladder gives us one last clear overview. Down at the bottom, you've got primitive defenses, like denial, that keep us stuck. In the middle, neurotic defenses, like displacement, are kind of like temporary band-aids. But up at the top, mature defenses, like sublimation and humor, well, those allow us to deal with life stresses in a way that actually helps us grow. Look, the point of all this is not to judge yourself or anyone else. The truth is we all use a mix of these defenses all the time. The real power comes from awareness. Just by starting to recognize which bodyguards your brain prefers to call on, you can start to consciously choose more mature, more constructive strategies. And that right there, that is the very first step toward becoming the architect of your own emotional world.